Welcome to this latest QA video. I'm Jeremy Flight. I'm the Technical Director at Rubica, a creative agency based in Derby. I'm going to talk to you today about security certificates. It won't be a technical talk, although security certificates themselves are a technical thing. This is aimed very much at people who are business owners, who are marketing managers, or people just with the responsibility for their corporate website. Security certificate, before we get into the reasons why you'd want one, why you put one onto your website, let's explain what it does. A security certificate, traditionally, you would have only found on websites where there was an opportunity to purchase something online, and therefore at some stage the user of your site would have needed to put in their credit card or their debit card details. Or maybe your website was one that had a login facility, perhaps protecting personal information, private information that user could access. And so therefore you'd have only found it on sites where there was personal information, a need for privacy and a need for security. In particular, an occasion where the user is able to input information. That might be a username and password, credit card number as we say, or anything that's deemed sensitive and really needs protecting. And therefore the reason you put a security certificate onto a website like that is that the information the user enters becomes encrypted, scrambled in other words, before it's sent out across the internet. So it really protected what that information was. In the absence of a certificate and in the same situation, that information they enter, their password, their credit card number, is sent across the internet in its native format, in plain text format, which doesn't sound good straight away. Obviously that makes it possible for somebody to grab hold of that information almost as it passes by across the internet. In reality it's nothing like as simple as that, but still that type of data shouldn't be sent without some suitable security around it. So if your website today is not one of these, if it doesn't sell something online and invite the opportunity for the user to enter their credit card details, if it has no sort of login facility and so there's no protected or personal information there and no opportunity for somebody to enter a username and password, historically you'd be fine and those sorts of websites wouldn't have had a certificate. Today it's a little different. Although the premise behind it hasn't changed at all, certain other things have. And I'm going to talk about three in particular, which I think become today three reasons why anybody really should put a security certificate onto their website. The first of those was really sort of brought about by Google, in particular with its Chrome browser, and it started in 2018, that sort of time, to show in the top left corner, near where you type in the web address, a warning for any website that didn't carry or didn't use a security certificate. And the warning simply said not secure, which strictly speaking is true because it doesn't have a certificate, but was quite scaremongery almost, and clearly not a good thing. If people are visiting your website and seeing this warning not secure at the top, particularly when they've not been used to seeing that previously, they might end up thinking something's changed, something bad's going on here, and that might be sufficient to deter them and send them somewhere else. So through no fault of your own, these days you will find it if you go and look at your website after you've listened to this, you'll find that if you look at your website, it hasn't got a security certificate there. This warning comes up in the top left corner of the browser, and it does put people off. So for that reason, you can get around the warning by having a certificate installed. The second reason is that certainly in the UK, with recent GDPR legislation, and to be honest, just a wider best practicing around looking after data, you do very well to argue that you don't need a certificate if your website gives the user any opportunity at all to submit information. So while certainly not every website historically has provided opportunities for people to buy online or had a login section, almost all business websites have some sort of inquiry form. And that inquiry form by its nature is going to ask the user to enter personal data, even if it is just their first name, their surname, and some form of contact detail. And so really that data should be protected just as a credit card number or a password has been protected in the past. So the need really to ensure you're looking after your users in that regard is critical, is very important. And your third reason again comes down to Google, this time with regards to its search engine, and it has openly said that it favours websites that have a security certificate installed. So all other things being equal, if you had two near identical websites and one had a certificate and one didn't, it's the one with that's likely to appear higher up in the search engine rankings. So if SEO, if your position in Google and Yahoo and other search engines is important, adding a certificate to your website and doing nothing else itself is a bit like a shot in the arm. It's a boost for your website, and it might see you gain a couple of positions in search engine rankings. So there's three reasons overall. I would add to that, these days it's almost just like good PR. It's best practice, it looks good. Even if these three reasons we've talked about aren't particularly compelling for you, your search engine ranking doesn't matter, you don't ask for any sort of personal information on any inquiry form, if none of these other things really matter, okay, but it still looks good, and it's almost become the convention. So if your site is now almost the odd one out that doesn't have a certificate, whereas most others do, and then folks are going to see this warning in the top left corner, it doesn't look good. There are better reasons for having a certificate than that, but still I think that's important too. In terms of the technicalities of getting it sorted out, your first point of call is your web developer, or if you have a direct relationship with the people who host your website, then go to them as well. The process of adding the certificate is relatively straightforward, and the cost is not high. It's the sort of thing that you have to renew, a bit like your web address, your domain name, you renew periodically. But it's not a difficult thing to install. There might be some work for your web developer to do to your website itself once the certificate is there, but that's a conversation you would have with them and explore what's possible. So watching this now in 2019, if you're at a point where you very much have your same website as you did many years back, there's no security certificate there, and if you're unsure, go to your website after you finish watching, change the address at the top so that it starts HTTPS instead of just HTTP. Press enter and see what happens. If your website works perfectly okay, you have a certificate. If you see errors or you just see a horrible mess on the screen, you don't. And so if that's the case, I think the time's come to take a look at that, to get one implemented on your website and to start to benefit from that.